YouTube? Thank you for watching this video. Please comment down below, like, and subscribe if you think that this content is worth your while. Now, I wanted to talk about something really quickly. There's a lot of creators out there in the bodybuilding space and educators talking about how Boldenone is potentially renal toxic. And I wanted to talk about why that might be an actual thought and what might truly be the cause of it as opposed to Boldenone. So I have a study, and I've drifted through so much literature, and I've not really been able to find anything besides rodent models showing that there is potential renal toxicity. And by renal toxicity, I mean to your kidneys, right? Your kidneys are going to be damaged due to using specifically equipoise or EQ or Boldenone, the anabolic androgenic steroid that we all know and love. And I want to really kind of pull apart that and ask the question, like, is it really exclusively renal toxic when compared to several other compounds? So in this video, I wanted to show you really quickly, if I can, this data right here. So there's a nice study. It's a case study done on one individual. So obviously not the whole world, but I wanted to kind of point out a flaw that many other studies I have seen don't really account for. And one of those flaws is simply that, we'll get into it. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We'll get into this. The number one thing first, I want to say, this is educational purposes only. You're not allowed to use this as permanent information that you think is actually going to be justifiable to justifiably use equipoise. But this case report, a 37-year-old male was admitted into the hospital, was referred to medical intake due to perceived abdominal renal function. So he had an in-functioning kidney. Essentially, his EGFR and creatinine was off the chart, and he walks into the doctor and he's like, hey, something's wrong. He had been suffering from an acute episode of depression and had started citalopram 3 months earlier. They thought it was something related to his use of other drugs such as NSAIDs and citalopram, and it turned out that he actually disclosed that he did bodybuilding. So he's right here. He says he was a self-employed business manager and did bodybuilding for a hobby. He admitted to occasionally taking creatine supplementation, but at the time of presentation had not taken it any for 2 months. So that's an interesting thing. I think a lot of anabolic androgenic steroid users are not going to admit that they take anything. That's just kind of how it is, unfortunately. And so this individual is saying, no, I just take creatine. That's all I do. I'm a normal bodybuilder. But he's presenting with a case of hypertension, 130/70. He's also, during the urinalysis, had an extreme degree of protein in his urine. We go through here. His liver functions were slightly abnormal, which is kind of like a key hallmark of bodybuilding. His creatinine was 329 the next week. So not the week he presented himself, the next week. So this is a week after the large fluctuation. So he noted a couple things. They're just talking about these measurements again. The creatinine kinase level was tested and found slightly elevated at 3 to 46. Blah, blah, blah. I'm reading this with you. I'm trying to find the parts that I like. Here we go. So basically, he returned to the clinic the following week and having his creatinine having returned to normal levels. This was after he had stopped using equipoise, right? And their determination of this was that his use of equipoise, which he finally let them know about, anabolic androgenic steroids, he let them know, hey, I was taking this stuff. This might be what happening. So they interpreted this as, okay, well, that's what caused his renal failure, right? That's what, or not renal failure, but renal disease. And one might really do interpret that, right? Some people really think that that might be the true cause. But when I look at this, I'm seeing someone who's, first of all, hypertensive currently, right? So they're already hypertensive. Their urinalysis already shows protein in the urine. And then, what was his hematocrit? That's like what I really want to know. So when you look for hematocrit, you see nothing. There's nothing. So, yeah, nothing. So it's like, okay, now what does Boldenone do? Well, we know that Boldenone dramatically increases hematocrit levels, which means the syrupiness of your blood, it gets thicker. Your blood gets thicker. There's a more red blood cells in your blood at that current moment, which gets it thicker, right? Well, if you can imagine, consider your kidney like It's when you ever put your thumb onto a garden hose and it starts spraying out a little bit faster. That's kind of like your kidney. Your thumb is your kidney in that instance, right? Now imagine you have a large bout of pressure pushing through really, really thick water and you're trying to place your thumb over it. It would actually be really hard to hold your thumb over that hose. And so essentially when your blood is thick, it's going to be a lot, just by fluid dynamics, it's going to be harder to hold that water in, and thus those little filters that your kidney is using to filtrate your blood are being really pushed hard up against, and that can be like literally destructive to your kidney. So that's one thing. And the second thing, like I said, the high pressure comes into play too. He was already hypertensive. This was already as he's entered into the hospital. What was his blood pressure like, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before? We don't know this guy's cycle history. He said he used equipoise. He didn't truthfully say that right away. He only said that after coming in the next week. So do we know how much he was taking? Do we know how many cycles he's done, how long he's done this? It's a really, really important thing to ask the question, say, what is going on and why might this individual be experiencing these things really? And so what I would encourage you to look at is, in this case study specifically, we see someone with high blood pressure, likely a high hematocrit, likely previous history of anabolic androgenic steroid use. And to create a more full picture, we look at this and say, okay, maybe this guy had pre-existing things happening to him. Was it really Boldenone that was doing this, or was it the high blood pressure? Was it the high hematocrit gone unchecked? Was it the copious use of other anabolic androgenic steroids that played a role into this, right? And he's pretty young, 37, right? So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say that, it probably wasn't the equipoise that just all of a sudden detonated his kidneys. It was probably a lifelong use of androgenic anabolic steroids. He was in Thailand. They literally say this. He was in Thailand and had 4 months to buy drugs legally like this. So he did so, and obviously that led to an abnormal EGFR and clinical signs of renal disease. So my opinions on this, what can you do? Well, I would immediately, as you're about to enter a course of any androgenic anabolic compound, I would really, really encourage you to go get blood work and see where is your hematocrit. See where your blood pressure is. That doesn't require blood work. That just requires a cheap blood pressure monitor. I would see where your EGFR lays and your creatinine and your C-reactive protein and your cystatin C. I would see where these things are. Then, as you enter the course of an anabolic androgenic steroid, such as equipoise, EQ, Boldenone, whatever you want to call it, I would then subsequently follow up with tests 10 weeks after starting, 18 weeks after starting, however long you run your course, and really determine, okay, does my blood need work? I would make a donation of blood a very regular thing. You can do it every 3 months, so do that. Be very, very proactive with getting your blood drawn and drained so that hematocrit doesn't get too damn high. I would stay away from combining vitamin C with red meats specifically, as that vitamin C can kind of enhance the bioavailability of iron and cause for a higher hematocrit just by the way of doing that. And then I would also consider, things like controlling your blood pressure, right? Taking an ARB, taking an ACE inhibitor, lowering your heart rate, lowering your blood pressure goes a long, long way to protecting your kidneys for a very, very long time. You could also look at SGLT2 inhibitors, but I would more so along the lines of just say, hey, let's really look at foundationally, where's your hematocrit? Is it as low as we can comfortably get it with you feeling as good as you comfortably can? Where is your blood pressure? Is it ramping up against the line of type 1 hypertensive, or is it nominal? Like, we want that nominal to even low at some points during the day, and if it's not, what can we do to achieve that? Maybe that's changing mineral balance with potassium, sodium, of the like. Maybe that's doing something else, but finding out what you need to do in order to get that blood pressure under control is probably number one. Hematocrit, number two, make sure that your blood's not getting syrupy, right? Also, that being said, I would probably take a baby aspirin every morning. They're 81 milligrams of aspirin. That can help kind of unclot some of those clotting factors in the blood. Also diminishing the risk of clotting as your blood gets thicker too. So these are all just things that I would take and apply so that when you're using these drugs, because equipoise is one of my favorite compounds. I'm not gonna lie. I take it personally when people say it's a shit compound, you shouldn't use it because it's renal toxic. In my blood work, personally, I've never seen any deviations from normal kidney function with the use of equipoise as compared to primobolan, mastron, or any other kind of compound I typically don't like nandrolone and any other progesterogenic compounds. So I stick with mostly the testosterone derivatives, but I really have not seen anything. I haven't seen it in my clients, and honestly, I don't think it's a huge issue. But I would be careful, right? Because there is data like this. There is rodent data that shows in rabbits having, kind of acute kidney disease due to equipoise, right? But again, were they testing these rabbits' hematocrit, blood pressure, heart rate, all the things that really come into integral play when it considers anabolic androgenic steroid use. So that is my 2 cents. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Deuces.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and comment down below what you thought. If you'd like to hear more from me, please follow me on social media at Kolton_Red on Instagram and Kolton Lucas on TikTok. And if you'd like to inquire about coaching, please DM me on Instagram for more information. Thank you.